Hi, welcome to Coding Droplets and thank you for watching this video. This is a complete course to develop .NET applications or services with gRPC. So this video is part of a series and this is the fifth video of the gRPC C# tutorial series. You can check out the playlist link that is mentioned in the video description for finding the other videos in this series. In the previous videos, we have covered the basic concepts of gRPC, protocol buffers, which is also called as protobuf, data types in protobuf, then gRPC unary API and streaming APIs, then gRPC authentication using JWT, etc. Now in this video, we are going to see about the AspNetCore gRPC deadline or gRPC C# deadline. So first let us see what is a gRPC deadline. A deadline allows a gRPC client to specify how long it will wait for a call to complete. When a deadline is exceeded, the call will get cancelled. So setting a deadline is important because it provides an upper limit on how long a call can run for. It stops misbehaving services from running forever and exhausting the server resources. Deadlines are a useful tool for building reliable apps and should be configured. Don't miss the upcoming videos in this channel. Please subscribe the channel named Coding Droplets. Also don't forget to press the bell icon so that you will get notified once we upload new videos. So now let us see few points about deadline configuration. A deadline is configured using call options.deadline when a call is made. There is no default deadline value. gRPC calls are in time limited unless a deadline is specified. So setting a deadline is very important. Otherwise, the gRPC calls from the client will wait till it receives the response from the gRPC server. So if the server is taking a long time to respond back, the client will keep on waiting till it receives the response. A deadline is the UTC time of when the deadline is exceeded. For example, datetime.utcnow.addSeconds of 5 is a deadline of 5 seconds from now. From now means from the time of calling the gRPC method. So it is important that the deadline should be assigned in UTC time or universal time. If a past or current time is used, then the call immediately exceeds the deadline. So don't assign past or current time like just datetime.utcnow as deadline. You will always receive deadline exceeded error. The deadline is sent with the gRPC call to the service and is independently tracked by both the client and the service. It is possible that a gRPC call completes on one machine, but by the time the response has returned to the client, the deadline has been exceeded. So what if a deadline is exceeded? The client and the service have different behavior. So the service means the gRPC server application. The client immediately aborts the underlying HTTP request and throws a deadline exceeded error. The client app can choose to catch the error and display a timeout message to the user. So we can just use try catch method and display a error message to the user that we can show something like the request timed out. Now on the server, the executing HTTP request will get aborted and the server call context.cancellation token is raised. Although the HTTP request is aborted, the gRPC call continues to run on the server until the method completes. It's important that the cancellation token is passed to async methods so they are cancelled along with the call. For example, passing a cancellation token to async database queries or HTTP requests. Passing a cancellation token allows the cancelled call to complete quickly on the server and free up the resources for other calls. The next important point is gRPC deadline propagation. So let's see how we can do gRPC deadline propagation in C# or in .NET. So let's assume we have a gRPC client application. So that can be a console application or a web application or whatever kind of applications. So from the client application, we are making a gRPC call to a gRPC server application. So let's name that server application as gRPC server app 1. Now from the gRPC server method, we are making a call to another gRPC server application. So let's name that gRPC server as gRPC server app 2. So the client calls a gRPC method in gRPC server app 1, and that method in the gRPC server app 1 will call another gRPC method which is in gRPC server app 2. So in this scenario, we have to propagate the deadline assigned by the client to the gRPC server app 2. So in this video, I'll walk you through how we can propagate gRPC deadline to the end gRPC server. Now, let us start the implementation of gRPC deadline in our C#.NET project. So I have created a solution in which there are 3 different projects. So you can see the projects in the Solution Explorer. So the first project is a gRPC client, and the second project is a gRPC service. So this is an AspNetCore gRPC service project, and the third one is again an AspNetCore gRPC service. So I will explain why we need 2 different gRPC service projects. This is to demonstrate the propagation of gRPC deadline in gRPC services. So fine. Now let's open the gRPC client and I will show you what are all there in the gRPC client project. So in the gRPC client project, inside protos folder, we have one proto file, calculation.proto, in which we have 2 methods. One is sum and another one is subtract. So both methods accept calc request as parameters. So calc request is having 2 different fields or 2 different properties, number 1 and number 2, and both methods returns calc response as a response from the API. So these 2 are simple unary API. So we have already discussed about gRPC unary API in our previous video. So in the same way, I have created a unary API to demonstrate gRPC deadline. Now let us move to the gRPC service app 1. So let me close this and I'm opening the projects. So here you can see the protos folder, and inside the protos folder we have 2 different proto files. One is calculation.proto, the same thing which we have in the gRPC client project. So this is having 2 different methods, the same message and for request and response, and 2 different methods inside the service. So I will open the service implementation of calculation service. Here you can see here we have overridden the sum method and the subtract method. So here in sum method, it will save the result in a variable number 1 plus number 2. So we will get these 2 parameters from the request, and it will return the value or the result immediately from here itself. Now for subtract method, here this particular service is also a gRPC client. So here what we have done is we have declared a channel for connecting to gRPC service app 2, and it will call a request a gRPC method subtract async and pass the number 1 and number 2 which we have received in this request, and it will get a response from gRPC server app 2 and it will respond back with the result. Now let us see what is there in gRPC service app 2. So I'm just opening the project, and here you can see there is only one proto file, subtract.proto. So in this particular proto file we have a single method subtract which accept subtract request, that is number 1 and number 2, and it will respond back with a result. So I'm just opening the service implementation, subtract service implementation, and here you can see we have overridden the subtract method here, and the result is request.number1 minus request.number2, and here we are returning the value. So this is the implementation what we have done in gRPC Service App 2. So basically what will happen is when a user calls the subtract method from the client will send the request to gRPC Service App 1, and the gRPC Service App 1 send the same request to gRPC Service App 2. And the response will go back in the same way. The gRPC Service App will send the response to gRPC Service App 1, and from here the response will get sent to the client. Fine. Now let me open the program.cs of the gRPC client. Let me close all other tabs. Fine. Here you can see now we have hard-coded number 1 and number 2 here, 100 and 25. And we are just printing the numbers in the console window. After that, I have opened the channel, gRPC channel. So this is basically the port number or the URL in which gRPC Service App 1 is listening to. And I have created the client object here, calculation client. And here there are two different methods, sum and subtract, which is mentioned here. Sum method is mentioned here, that is sum result equals calculation client sum async, and we are passing number 1 and number 2, and we are just displaying the result here in the console window. So let's see what are the parameters we are passing to the sum method. So we are passing the calculation client object and the two numbers, number 1 and number 2. In the same way for subtract method, we are doing the same. We are passing the calculation client object, the number 1 and number 2, and we are just calling the subtract method from the calculation client, and we are displaying the result in the console window. So once these two different processes got completed, we will shut down the channel, and we are just printing channel closed here. So this is what happening in the client project. So now first let me run the project. So currently we have not implemented the gRPC deadline anywhere in the project. So I'm running it now, and you can see here we will receive the response in the client project. So this is the client project, and here you can see number 1 is 100, number 2 is 25, sum result is 125, and subtraction result is 75. After that, the channel got closed. Fine. Now let us implement the gRPC deadline in our gRPC calls. So first, let me implement the gRPC deadline in the sum method. So while calling the calculation client.sumAsync, we can pass the deadline. So you know that this particular method is sent to gRPC Service App 1, and the gRPC Service App 1 will respond back directly to the client. So there is no role for gRPC Service App 2 in this particular method. So here what I'm doing is I'm passing one more parameter. Deadline is datetime dot UTC now. So we have already mentioned that deadline should be in UTC timestamp. So UTC now dot add seconds, or you can use add minutes, add whatever you need. I'm using add seconds of 5. So that means the deadline is 5 seconds. Now what is happening is the client is saying the server that my deadline is 5 seconds. I need to get the response in between 5 seconds, otherwise the request will get cancelled. Fine. So now I have implemented that, and I'm running the project, and now nothing will happen. We will get the result as normal. Why? Because fetching the result won't take 5 seconds from the server. Fine, everything is working fine. Now in the server side, what I'm doing here is in gRPC Service App 1, I'm opening the calculation service, and here inside the sum method, I'm just awaiting. So await task dot delay. Now here we can await it for 10 seconds. So here we need to provide value in milliseconds. So I'm providing it. So 1000 milliseconds means 1 second. So we need 10 seconds. So here we have to provide it like this. And in order to use await method, uh, here we can, okay, there is no need of task from result. I can directly call, or I can directly return the value like this. Fine. Now let's run the application. Now you can see there will be an error. So the client will wait for 10 seconds. Now the sum result request has been sent to the server and waiting for the response. Yes. Now we can see that there is a status code of deadline exceeded. So this is what happens when the deadline is exceeded. So here what we can do is, now in our client project, inside the sum method, I'm just using a try catch method, try catch RPC exception. So for that we have to use gRPC.core, okay, RPC exception EX, and here I'm just checking whether the exception is deadline exceeded. So what I can do here is ex.statuscode equals statuscode.deadline exceeded. In that case, I'm just printing in the console window something like some result request timed out. Fine. Now I'm moving the entire call, gRPC call, inside the try method. Fine. Now let me run the application again, and now the gRPC client is waiting for the sum result. It will wait for 5 seconds, and after that you can see now the sum result request timed out, and we got the subtraction result here, that is 75. So this is how we can implement AspNetCore gRPC deadline. Now let us see how we can do gRPC deadline propagation in C# or in a .NET project. So in order to propagate the gRPC deadline, what we have to do here is the gRPC client will send the deadline to the gRPC service app 1, and gRPC service app will send the same deadline to gRPC service app 2. So let us see how we can do it. So here now in the subtract method, I'm making some changes. So this is in the client project in program.cs. I'm here also I'm mentioning, or I'm providing the try catch method in the same way. So I'm just copying it from here, and instead of sum result we have to use subtraction result request timed out. Now I'm moving this gRPC call under the try method. Fine. Now while calling this particular method, in the same way I can provide deadline is datetime dot utcnow dot add seconds of 5. In the same way, from the client application we are sending a deadline to gRPC service app 1. Fine. Now inside the service implementation of gRPC service app 1, what we can do here is, from this particular parameter server call context, we can fetch, or we can get the deadline what is mentioned by the client. So here what we can do here is var, I'm just declaring a new variable deadline equals context dot deadline. So here you can see there is a property named deadline which will return, or which is a datetime data type. So this is the same deadline which has been passed by the gRPC client. So now, not in sum method, what we have to do here is, now in subtract method, we are passing, or we are making another gRPC call to the gRPC service app 2. So here what I can do here is deadline is context dot deadline. So I have passed the same deadline to this particular method. So that means gRPC service app 2 will also receive the same deadline which has been passed from the client. Fine. Now in gRPC service app 2, I'm making, sorry, not in program.cs, in the service implementation, in the same way, I'm making this method async and removing task from result. We don't need it if it is async. Fine. Now here I'm awaiting task.delay of 10 seconds, and let us see what is the response we are getting in the gRPC client. So here you can see now it is waiting for the sum result, so we know that it will time out. Yeah, it got timed out. Now waiting for the subtraction result, and it will also timed out. Yeah, request timed out. So the client will wait only for 5 seconds. If it is not getting the response within 5 seconds, it will get timed out. So that's it for this video. Hope you liked it. Please like the video, comment to the video, and share the video. So see you all in the next video. Thank you.